In this section, we will cover an example of a group activity, maintenance groups, managing groups, and 7 common roles you'll find in a group. Let's start with an activity. Before you are a series of famous faces. Some may be recognizable and some may not, and that's okay. CST grounds itself in creating a fun learning environment based on implicit learning. You want to encourage opinions rather than facts. It's very common to want to ask in this sort of scenario, who remembers who and who do you think this man is? Rather than asking those questions, what are other questions that you can ask to facilitate conversation? Some examples may be, while pointing to Audrey Hepburn and Lucille Ball, both of these women are wearing pearls. What sort of occasion would you wear pearls to? Do you think they're going to a party? Are they going to the doctor? A fun one that we use often is placing the images of these famous faces in front of particular people and asking who would you like to go out on a date with and why. Maintenance groups. After completing the initial 7-week curriculum, what's next? Well, this depends on a variety of elements, availability of participants, spacing, facilitators. But if you are able to do a maintenance group, like the main CST program, it follows a prescribed curriculum that you can find in Making a Difference too. Maintenance group focus on themes, within a primary emphasis on cognitive stimulation, including that reminiscence therapy and multisensory stimulation that you find in CST. It is believed that maintenance CST can not only maintain improvement on a cognition level, but also perhaps improve as well. Now, there are logistics in terms of creating a maintenance group. Are you going to continue it in the facility or community? Is there space? Is there time? And incorporating new members into the group. Group name and group song may be something that a group memberships take on as an identity. So while introducing a group member that is new, perhaps involve them in the process of creating a new name, creating a new song, or seeing if they're comfortable with keeping the same. You want to manage the size properly of these groups, nothing too big. Even with 2 co-facilitators, this can become quite difficult. And recognize again when residents and participants are no longer appropriate for the group. In order to do this, it's important to monitor the process, both for your sake as a facilitator and also to see the benefit within your participants. Utilizing the SLUMS, quality of life, and depression scale, you're able to provide feedback to caregivers and participants on how this intervention is being effective. Again, regular support and supervision is essential in running a group, including a maintenance group. Facilitating, leading and maintaining groups and its personalities. Co-leading a group is quite the effort when it comes to CST, and therefore it's essential to have a co-facilitator that's a good match, someone that complements you. So choose your co-facilitator, your co-leader carefully. Someone that has a good understanding of dementia symptoms and behaviors, the patience and ability to manage and redirect, the ability to emotionally connect with group members as well as their families, and define the roles prior to beginning the group. This is an individual you're beginning a journey on, one that you want to rely on throughout the sessions. Now, anyone who's had experience with groups recognizes that you don't only just have the group, you have all the personalities in the group. In terms of CST, it might be a little bit different. You might have a variety of cognitive abilities. It can be difficult to attempt to address everyone's cognitive need and pay attention to every single individual need at the same moment. This is where you'll rely on your co-facilitator in order to find a happy medium for everyone. As a co-facilitator, as a leader, it's important to recognize where everyone is at in the group at all times. How are people feeling? Paying attention to individuals that are monopolizing the conversation. it takes a little bit of flexibility in order to recognize the group's needs, address the needs, and continue forward seamlessly. Also, while working with the population at hand, it's important to recognize physical needs as well, such as ambulation, mobility, and toileting. You need to assure that your residents' physical needs are met in terms of your co-facilitators. If you are in a facility environment, perhaps making sure that you have that supportive staff nearby to help with those particular things. So now let's discuss some common concerns and questions while managing a group. It is very difficult to get some members to come to sessions. Although once they are there, they really seem to enjoy it. What could you do to encourage them? As a co-facilitator, this is a common occurrence, especially when dealing with the disease process with individuals who may not remember the group, who may not remember having a good time last week. It's best to approach from the heart and the senses. A great point of CST is the utilization of the sense of smell. Perhaps you encourage with cookies, this baking smell and the reminiscence that brought along with that. Making sure that you know your participants on a deeper level than just their name is also beneficial. Engage this participant who may not want to participate in the group. Really ask why. Get them involved in what's going on, and always offering the ability, if at any time you don't want to participate, that's okay. Creating a safe environment is crucial to continuing a CST group. When the caregiver is a spouse, they sometimes can resent the closeness of the group. What can be done to help them feel a sense of inclusion? This can be very tricky to co-facilitators and anyone who works one-on-one with individuals with dementia. We'd like to encourage caregivers to continue on this process outside of our group sessions. One way of doing that is providing a one-day fact sheet of everything that you covered, including the news article, including topics of conversation, so the conversation can continue at home. We don't wish to create this solitary, isolated environment in which an individual with dementia is having this great time, and then they go on into the regular life and are sullen or quiet and not engaged. We want to provide caregivers with the tools to continue on that conversation and continue to build those skills that they're building in group. Often, you will have one or two members who will take over and repeat the same lengthy stories over and over again. Other members begin to notice and are becoming bored. How can you manage this? Now, many of us in the aging field may have encountered this more than once. It's important to recognize the value in what is being said with these stories being repeated over and over again. Is there some sort of concern or anxiety that is causing this particular person to repeat themselves? What is the true meaning of the story? If you do have time, engage that person. Tell me more about that. What do you say when you mean that? And then engage other members from the group to comment as well. So rather than having one person continuously ruminate on a story, you're making a conversation, which then can be used as a launch pad for more group discussion. Roles of the group members. According to Schulman, there are 7 common roles of group members. We'll discuss them as follows. The scapegoat, the most common role. This member is targeted by other members and impose their own negative feelings upon. If anything goes wrong, it's the scapegoat's fault. So as a facilitator, this can pose quite a challenge. So there are ways in which that we can address this need. It's important to observe the pattern of why the group is particularly connecting on this particular person. Is there something happening that leads to a scapegoat? Is there any sort of tension that involved outside of group that leads to this behavior? It may be our initial tendency to want to side with the scapegoat, but unfortunately and difficultly, you must not. It is important to remain neutral at all times. Rather, gain a clear understanding of what's going on behind everything. Address it, continue, and move forward. Having the group and the group members recognize the pattern, one is then able to recognize, move forward, address, and move on. The deviant. This can be the most difficult individual. Someone who's always against the grain, always saying no to your ideas, or perhaps never really willing to participate. Again, with all these group member roles, it's important to understand the behavior behind it. Why is someone being so deviant? Why do they not want to participate? For one example, in a particular group that I ran, we had one individual who, though initially was interested in being part of the group, after a few sessions became agitated. Any sort of story brought up, it was met with, "That's dumb, why are we doing this?" to activities of, "This isn't something that I want to do, why are any of us are doing this, this is not worth my time." It took the co-facilitator and I, after a group session, to discuss amongst ourselves to really understand what's the best approach here. We spoke to this participant on his own and got a better understanding of his life. He was newly diagnosed, he had newly moved into the facility, and did not believe that he belonged in this group. It really spoke to an individual's struggle with recognizing their dementia diagnosis. Though he had reiterated that he wanted to be part of the group, we knew that this behavior could not continue. Therefore, we asked him to become a co-facilitator by offering him the opportunity to bring in news articles, to lead discussions. It really changed his behavior around. We were able to validate his needs, recognize it, and give him the opportunity to find fulfillment in the group just as other members were able to. The internal leader. Group leaders who are unsure of the role of the facilitator may experience internal leadership. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing. When working with individuals with dementia, we all had lives before dementia. You might be working with powerful CEOs, individuals who were head of their social concerns committees, natural leaders, and we want to encourage that and empower that. But how do we temper it to the point that it doesn't interfere with the main group activity? As co-facilitators, it's important that your group leaders, you're able to assure your group position. You are the leader, you recognize other opinions, but you're the one that is moving the ship forward. So in my experience, having an individual who was willing to jump up in front, try to stem conversation, trying to redirect in a way that they saw that was better, can be quite distracting and confusing for a lot of the other participants. So again, it took moments of taking this resident aside, affirming how wonderful it is that you have this leadership, we really could use you, and pairing them with a participant who may be on the quieter side. We were able to redirect that behavior and create a more smoother running group. The gatekeeper. This member guards the group from any topics that might be uncomfortable as a protective measure. And at times, it really is the views of the group that this person is representing. In the case of CST, there are a few moments in which this may occur. When we go over the newspaper article, we try to not shy away from topics of controversy. Recently, we presented an article on the Supreme Court's decision on gay marriage. There's a wide variety of opinions, but one particular woman was against the conversation at all. She would continuously say, "Why are we talking about this?" trying to change the subject, because obviously it made her very uncomfortable, as you could read with the anxiety and body language. It took a group facilitator to sit next to her and state, "We value your opinion. Thank you for sharing. Now let's hear from someone else." And that moment of, I validate you, I hear you, I understand this is uncomfortable, but as a group member and as an individual who's a part of this group, we'd like to hear from other people. And we moved on. The defensive member. This kind of would also tie into the deviant member. Often they go hand in hand. It's an individual who may not want to admit that they have a problem in this particular case, that they might have a cognitive decline, and may need services such as this. So it's important to help the member reach out and find support with other group members. Recognize that their defensiveness and resistance is coming from a place of vulnerability, and they may need more time on a one-on-one basis with co-facilitators and speaking with their caregivers to address this need. The quiet member. This member might remain noticeably quiet over the extended period of time. Now, we recognize that being quiet in the beginning is quite common. It's a new group, it's a new environment. But by the second or third session, personalities start to come out, and you'll start to notice that some individuals might remain quiet throughout. Now, personally, I'm an introvert, so I recognize that. I like to observe rather than speak. But in order for this intervention to work properly, we need individuals to participate. So how do you go about asking someone and pulling someone in and inviting them to engage without turning them off from the group completely? It's important to check with these members one-on-one, as a co-facilitator to a participant. Perhaps there's other issues at hand. Perhaps they don't have their hearing aids. Maybe they cannot see properly, and that's why they're not able to engage. If it's a matter of discomfort, this is again where you could pair your internal leader with your quiet member and create a partnership in which the two of them are able to fully participate. If the group setting is too much, often in the past we've separated our groups for small group activities. And in this environment, when we're doing 2 to 3 members per small group, you're really able to see that personality come out, that person feel affirmed and okay that I'm speaking in front of others, and that can lead into better group sessions as a whole. The monopolizer. This member talks a great deal and oftentimes takes over the discussion. Everyone has a lot to say, but at times some people may not have the ability, especially with the disease process, to recognize that it's time to give others a turn. In one particular group, we had one gentleman that was a monopolizer, but we also happened to have his wife as well. So she was always nudging him in the side to tell him to quit it, and it was time to move on. But not everyone has someone to stand by their side and nudge them. So what can you do as a co-facilitator? As we find in all these group personalities, it really comes back, validate, redirect. What are ways in which that we can support this individual in addressing his needs directly, but still recognize the needs of others? And the way that we can do this, if he is going on a tangent, speaking out about something that's somewhat on topic, value it, thank him for it, and then move on. It may take speaking with the caregiver to talk about what are topics that we may avoid, perhaps, that are triggering, that may lead to a 30-minute discussion. But also, you can speak with the participant. And often, if you come forward and say, Mr. So-and-so, I really love hearing your stories. Maybe you can talk to me afterwards about them. I'd love to hear more about them. But for now, let's move on to the next thing. Let's hear what Mrs. So-and-so has to say. As facilitators, you're not only working with the group, you're working with the individuals in the group. At any time, group members can take on multiple roles that may or may not be dysfunctional and challenging. But with the help of your co-facilitator, it is possible to accommodate these needs and difficulties of the individual and the group as a whole.